Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to the Board Game Design uh, Variety Hour. Almost forgot the name of the show for a second. I'm your host, Matthew Johnson. Welcome everyone on this fine Friday evening / day / morning, wherever you are. Hey Robin, hey Rory, welcome. Early birds, hey Alex. Hope everyone's doing well. Everyone's keeping, hey Hal, how you going? Everyone's keeping safe and well as best you can. Rob, the crew's all here. Hey Bess, how you go? Yeah, I know it's been a tough week for a lot of people, and hopefully this stream could be a bit of a relax, a little bit of an escape from maybe what else is going on in the world. Yeah, really hope everyone's well. And what have people up to? What's the plans been for today, or what have you been doing? I've been doing game design as normal, and a little bit of my normal job. Yes, how many Robs can we get up to? We're at well, two. Yes, two technically, I guess. Robin and Rob. Yeah, had a interesting. Actually, just had an interesting chat with a academic in the US that we're looking to maybe make a new narrative-based game for schools or something, which is kind of cool. Rory's working, but not on his own design. It's tricky. Yeah, I saw that Rory. There's gonna be Michael's gonna be doing a live playthrough of Set Sail, right? That's what the game's called, the Roll and Write. It's actually funny because I prepared to maybe play it on stream this stream, but it looks like if it's going to be played on stream, on Michael's stream, then maybe I'll just join in a little bit later today. But I had it all set up on Illustrator to be able to show it and play. But yeah, I can play along myself later on. Bass says loads of work on this side of the laptop. Well, yes, there's loads of work on this laptop. You just can't see it. I hide it during this time. No, don't apologize at all, Rory. It's I'm glad that Michael's doing it, and I'm looking forward to playing it. What does this do? I don't know what this does. Rob's not being very productive today. Yeah, I mean we've all been there. I think that's kind of a given at the moment. I think don't be too hard on yourself. I think is the best thing to be. Rob's been working his proper job. Might get to do some design later, but probably won't be until the weekend. Yeah, that's fair enough. Rory's still very new to playtesting on stream as a concept. Yeah, I think it's it's interesting. I mean, I think as a designer, anything you can do to get things played and to motivate yourself to playtest or play with other people, if streaming's part of that, then I think that all the more the merrier. I think that's a really great thing. Yeah, no, I've been really I placed it a bit earlier this week and gave Rory some feedback. And yeah, I'm really impressed with the design, actually, where it's going. It got us thinking a little bit about, as I opine about Patreon and things, and maybe Roll and Writes over Patreon or something could be kind of a cool concept. But yeah, anyway. It says, give me, oh, yes, sorry. Oh, whoops. Did you do something on the thing and I haven't seen it, probably? Hold on. Oh, yes, oh, thanks, Alex. Sorry. I have to, because I am on StreamYard, I don't see which is a bit stupid. I don't see the points alert thing. Yeah, the game jam idea is basically, so if you give me, give me a theme, a mechanic or anything, and I'll brainstorm for, I'll do like 20-30 minutes over stream, and see if we can sort of come together and make a game, or at least, put it out there in the world, how it could work. So yeah, if you want to either put it in the chat or whisper me a theme, mechanic, or whatever, and I'll do my best. I might, if you want to do it, we could do it this stream, but I will probably leave. I had a few plans, but maybe it'll be in the second half of the stream. But I don't know, or we could do it now. If I don't know, Alex, you usually sort of heading off in about an hour or something, so maybe I'll try and do it before the normal stuff. Ballroom dancing, Roll and Write. That would be interesting. I don't know so much about ballroom dancing, so it might be a bit of I'd have to sort of be thinking about it a little bit. Anyway, the rough plan for today was, I've got a few little links and news and bits and pieces to kind of share, which I think is kind of cool. And I've sort of said the top 10 games of 2020. It's not exactly true. It's really the top 10 games played by myself in 2020, not necessarily they have to be 2020 releases. But from the point of view of what you could learn from them as a designer, because I think there's some interesting games I've played that I think there's various like little lessons or little nuggets you can take out of them, and I thought I'd sort of try and summarize that. Everyone likes top 10 lists. Not that I've actually put mine in an order. There's just 10 of them. Actually, there's 12, but they're kind of categorized a little bit differently. Yeah, that's the kind of the rough plan, and it looks like maybe a game jam as well, and then maybe later on play some Tiny Islands or a little bit of GeoGuessr to sort of round out the stream. As always, Rob says, so Point Salad. Yes, Point Salad does feature, but I mean, it would be you know, it is a full, you know, about 10% of my gameplays this year, so I can't really say that it wouldn't feature on the list, but yeah, I won't talk very long about it because I've talked about it before on the stream. Yeah, but first, some kind of cool little amuse-bouche or something like that is, so I'm going to see if, I hope this is going to work and that it will actually also share the audio. So, is it making music? Can people hear sort of jazz? Did that noise come through? Okay, fantastic, it works. So this is a website that actually Teresi put me on called Jazz Keys, and it's a kind of a cool, I guess AI generated like jazz music based on what you type. So if someone wants to give, you know, what shall we say, you know, like. So you can sort of type whatever you like, and then it'll play the. Yeah, so it's kind of cool like that. I don't know if anyone wants a sentence. I'm happy to do a new sentence. If someone wants to put something in the chat, happy to show it off to everyone. But yeah, it's just, I don't know, it's just kind of cool. It's not, it's cool. Yeah, I'll put the link in as well. Hold on. Jazz Keys. Yeah, I just put it into the chat, so hopefully that all works. Yeah, I don't know what the info is on it, or like who. So Plan 8 is by Plan 8. So, but yeah, quite cool anyway. Yeah. I love that it also has more. It also plays like it plays even if you make mistakes and do a backspace. It's sort of. Robin's lagging by about 20 seconds. Yeah, for sure. Oh, okay. I tried to raid from We Are Hub Games, but I'm not editor role, so couldn't. Nice to see you, by the way, Zay. Is there a way, like, can I make you a mod or make you an editor or something? Is there something I could do to change that? Happy to do it. Yeah. Anyway, but yeah, jazzkeys.plan8.co. Yeah, check it out. Just a bit of fun sort of thing. Afternoon. Yeah, afternoon, Robert. I guess it's a funny time. So we started with a bit of a amuse-bouche of some just little bits and pieces I found during the week. So this is a site. You can see it earlier up in the chat, called jazzkeys.plan.jazzkeys. Oh, okay, all right, interesting. I can change something in settings. All right, I will check that. Hi, David. How are you going? Welcome. Yeah. So, and basically, you can type whatever you like, and it's sort of like an AI generated like jazz soundtrack. You know. You can see how badly I type, probably. So anyway, that's enough with Plan 8. But yeah, check it out. I quite like it. Yeah, it's a bit of fun. I hope. Yes, that works. There's an excellent. There's precisely the right number of Robs. No, nothing more, nothing less. The other thing I wanted to do is just a bit of a shout out to many of you probably have heard. Where are you? Maybe I'm not going to find it. Okay, let's just do that then. Travis Hill's Card Rails, which is a sort of a deck of cards, but sort of a take on the take on the kind of like cube rail game, and I really like what Travis does. I mean, he had a great interview with Mike Fox not that long ago. Recommend checking it out. And it looks like a really cool idea. I mean, I'm a huge sucker for taking, sort of known genres and then, putting new constraints on how things work. And this just looks really interesting that, the cards are basically used to build out the map, but also they also represent shares in your hand. It looks really cool. And it was part of this sort of Make 100 project. So he's producing 100 physical copies, which are only for the US, unfortunately, and went very quickly. But there is a print and play version that's available, and it's like 54 cards to print out. You don't need backs, and you just need some cubes. So, game designers should have a bunch of cubes. I'd recommend anyone sort of check it out. I can drop the link in the chat. Check out. It's only running for the next, like a little over 2 days. But if you can support Travis and back the print and play, I'm sure he'd appreciate it. And I think it's great to try and encourage designers who are making these really great projects. I think actually, and I'm really looking forward to actually trying it out. So yeah, that's kind of the other kind of brief part of the amuse bouche this evening. Oh yes, there are lots of Daves of Wonders. Yes, exactly. Have you got the shirt, David? Because I know they made a shirt of the Daves of Wonders, Daves of Wonder. For those who don't know, there are many Dave game designers in the UK, especially called Dave, and they formed a group called the Daves of Wonder, complete with funny logo and everything like that. Whoops. Yeah, it's really cool to see small Kickstarter projects succeeding. Exactly, and yeah, I think Travis has a really clear goal of what he wants to do, and I think he's executed on it brilliantly. And I am actually honestly really intrigued by the game. I love what you can do in these kind of small spaces. Very portable, these sort of things. So yeah, I think it'll be quite cool. So on to the main sort of thing, which unless Alex, if you still want, I mean, I'll have to look at Alex. Did you want the ballroom? Is that your choice of theme for the game jam? Or are you still trying to think about it? So let me know. Maybe I could do a few of the games I was going to do in the list, and then I could put the game jam in the middle or something like that. So I am open. I just don't want you to miss it. Otherwise, it'll have to happen a little bit later. So yeah, this is kind of like a bit of a reflection of the best games I played in 2020 and what you could learn from them as a designer. Like all great top 10 lists, in fact 12 games. And also these are actually there's not a particular order. And actually, in a way, it's not really about one is better than the other. It's just that you can learn different things from different games. And I just thought I'd go through them. I think it's sort of an interesting thing looking back. Yeah. So the first kind of award that I would give, or the first kind of learning, is what I'm calling the quick and fresh reward. And basically, these are games which I think surprised me with their simplicity, but also yeah, like how actually there can still be fresh ways to do very simple games. Actually, yeah. So I've said this before. These are not all games. In fact, very few of these games are actually published in 2020. It's based on what I played in 2020. So the first one is okay. So Alex, maybe we choose another. Like you have redeemed your game jam, and you can request it when is appropriate. You don't have to spend the points again. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, maybe send me a message on Twitter or something, and we'll work it out. Cool. Yeah. So I'm sorry if anyone ever redeems points in the thing, which is great. I am still, because I'm still via Streamlabs. You know, I don't see the notification. So feel free to like shout in chat if I've missed something, and I'll check. So yes, onto the list. The Quick and Fresh Awards. So I have 3 games in this particular category, and first, whoops, is going to be, whoops, I'm very big there. Oh, well, that's probably fine, I guess. I can probably do it like that. No, that one. Okay, so first is going to be Point Salad. No great surprise. Everyone, you know, will probably laugh. I've talked about it on the stream already, you know, several times. So I won't belabor the point much more than I have already, basically. But I think, you know, I'm still just completely surprised. I think for me, I talk about a little bit about like flow in games, and I think this is a really great example of flow, that every time someone takes an action, it moves the game state forward. I think that's great. So when you take ingredients, that means new goals are available and new ingredients are available. When you take a goal, a new goal is available, and it changes what ingredients are available. So it just has a really great flow. The combinatorics are great. Like it's you know, there's a reason I played it like 64 times in the year, that you know, just that variety, while at the same time it never becoming too complex or too difficult. You know, that variety and the combinatorics factor to that. The fact that you don't see all the goals every game, because sometimes you'll just never see them because you only see them as ingredients. So I think, yeah, very simple idea, very well executed, and I think the main thing to take out of Point Salad, as from a game design point of view, I think is a focus on flow. How can you make sure that every action that a player takes moves the game state forward for all the players and keeps it kind of interesting and fresh, and new ways to sort of do it. Oh, Bess, you also did the game jam mode. Okay, whoops, sorry. We'll come back another time. Yeah, okay. Perfect. Well, thanks. I'm sorry I missed it before, but yeah, I will. Maybe we'll have like a game jam. We can make next Monday the game jam stream where, you know, I just do game jams, a few game jams. So yeah, that's Point Salad. But check my old streams. I talked about Point Salad quite a bit. And I think, you know, I could easily see myself playing this like at least 20 times every year, forever, maybe. I don't know. And there's very few games that you can sort of do that. And at this point, there's just a nice, I keep saying the word flow, but there's just a really nice flow to the game. You know, it's almost meditative in some way. I did say that there was a slight problem with 2 players, unfortunately, that I think like certain cards are just a bit more powerful, but that's fine. And actually, I love the opportunities even to play this when I will be able to play with more than 2 players. I'm really looking forward to getting to play at higher player counts, because actually we played a little bit over Christmas, and suddenly everything's a bit different on 4 players and different strategies, which is kind of crazy to think. And like it's just these cards, it's just 2 things, just ingredients and goals. But yeah, just really impressed. And I think it's something that you really you need to play to, I think, appreciate the elegance of it. I think it's hard to read the rules and go like, and it's what I did when I started. You know, I looked at the game originally. I was just like, oh, it's like cubes and contracts kind of thing. How amazing can that be? You know, but it's only when you play it do you realize that, yeah, just the rapidness of it, rapidity or something. You know, like it just goes. You know, which is fantastic. Rob says, I was listening to Fun Problems earlier, and they were talking about games driving towards a conclusion. Exactly. You always want the game state to move forward. And I think it's something that comes up in a lot of games, like contract games, right? Where you have a row of cards or anything like that. And it's how do you keep those options being refreshed? Because often you have a problem, like if there are some cards that, like if you've got like a river of cards, you know, there can be cards at the head of the river that nobody wants and they just stick there the whole game and they're not interesting. Like that's looking back a little bit on my own games. Scorpius Trader, for example, actually does have this problem a little bit, and it's something I'd love to have fixed in the game. You can have a bit of a stagnant market, and actually, it's how do the different actions interplay with each other? How does, you know, me taking something change what's available in other actions? So yeah, I think there's a lot you can learn from Point Salad. Next one up is Fairy Trails. I've also chatted about it. I mean, it's a little bit, I think there's probably with Fairy Trails, there's a little bit of like bias towards, you know, how recently I played it, because I've played this like 4 or 5 times, but only in the past few weeks. But for me, I think I've honestly it is just something new. I honestly have not seen this kind of competitive route building 2-player like combative game. For me it just really is just new. And I'd be interested. I'm sure there are other examples that I haven't played. And in some ways it's quite classical kind of game. You could imagine I think you could, obviously it wouldn't look like this, but I don't think you'd be so surprised if like Sid Sackson had designed this game or something, for example. But it also has like a lot of variability and like the race aspect. It's kind of interesting. I've been playing, so I played this, and also I got Robin of Locksley, which is also another Uwe Rosenberg kind of race game. And it's sort of interesting because I had, I'm actually coming around to quite liking his race games. It's sort of interesting. They're the first two I've sort of played, and I think I'd be quite interested in trying New York Zoo, and quite interested in trying Reykholt, which are sort of these kind of more recent, race style kind of Euro games. And at 2 players, it just really works. There's just this interesting tempo that that there are different ways you can try, and in this game you're trying to play stones on the board, and you have to get rid of all your stones, and you can go like very slow and steady and just do like very small networks and try and get rid of 1 or 2 at a time, or you can try and make one huge network, which is a lot harder to close off. But if you do, then you can put down like 12 stones at a time. And as players, do these things at different rates, there's a bit of tension. Like someone can get really, really close to finishing, but then the other person will lay down a whole bunch of stones at one time, and suddenly it's completely turned. Robin of Locksley, which maybe I'll cover on the stream at some point, is also really interesting. That, like Reykholt, you have a bunch of goals that you're going around an edge, and you basically can keep completing goals as long as you've fulfilled requirements, or you can pay a resource, in this case a gold coin, to kind of do a requirement even if you haven't done it. So you can like go really far in one turn if you kind of string together these requirements. But you can also stay in one place for a long time and try and like get everything lined up so you can have a big turn. These are all games I played in real life. I'm very fortunate that my partner is happy to play a lot of different games, and this year I kind of splurged a little bit in buying games, or in some of these things I've had in my collection before, but I haven't really, to be honest, actually, even like before this year, even before the pandemic, I've actually been able to play more games in real life now because I wasn't always living with my partner before this year, and I've just had, thankfully in some way, I've had more time to actually play in real life. So that's been a really fortunate thing. And at Fairy Trails, I definitely, it's like a really different experience, but still really sharp, like really, really simple, but a lovely bit of emergence. I think any kind of network building game always kind of is going to have that bit of like emergent narrative. So yeah, I think for me, the reason it's on the list and why I would check it is just, honestly, I think it is just something new in this sort of type of package, in this kind of dual format, like 1v1 kind of race game, but with a network. Haven't really seen anything like that. So I would definitely recommend checking it out. Another game which you can't, I don't think if you read the rules, you won't really be able to capture fully how this game feels. And I think it's probably the case for a lot of games on the list in a way, which is why it's recommended that you try them out, because there's only so much you can get from reading rules sometimes, unfortunately. No worries. Enjoy your meeting, Rory. Thanks for dropping by. Maybe see you on Michael's stream. I'm guessing you're going to be there while the playtesting is happening. But yeah, hope to see you then. So the last of the quick and fresh is definitely not a 2020 game. It's actually for 2017. It's Fantasy Realms. So this is a very quite streamlined drafting game. I mean, in a way, I guess I can see maybe I like these styles of games. It's a little bit like Point Salad, because in this, every card has a different way it scores, and there's a lot of different combinations. I think for me, like, this is kind of like combo building personified. And unlike Point Salad, where the combinatorics are very, what's the word? Like, they're kind of non-exponential. Like, you get more tomatoes, you score more tomatoes. It's just this very kind of fairly linear kind of set. In this, it mixes that up. Sometimes you have quite linear scoring. Sometimes you've got this amazing quest that you've got to try and get cards. Cards have numbers and types, and sometimes maybe you have to get all different numbers, and that completely changes the way how the whole game plays, because you have this huge constraint, but you get lots and lots of points for doing it, or you're so specifically trying to find 2 exact cards in the whole deck, and you get lots of points for doing that. For me, I think it's just it packs that I think, you know, in bigger Euro games, you know, people talk about you know, different paths to victory or different strategies, and I think, at least my interpretation of that is that people want to feel like they want to try something new out, like they want to try a different arc, a different strategy. They want to be doing different actions. They want to see how that kind of feels when you do that, and that's kind of, people like to explore that. They like the diversity. They like the ability that you have lots of different things that you can kind of master, because when you might try and do a particular path to victory, first time you might do it, you might not do it very well. But in later, you can try it again, but you don't know in a particular game whether you're going to be doing exactly that type of strategy. Are you going to mix strategies together? So that kind of exploration and newness is, I think, a big reason why those Euros that have those many paths to victory, they keep getting played. Race to the Galaxy is another game that comes to mind. And I think Fantasy Realms actually does the same thing. It kind of has lots of paths to victory, but it's all condensed down into this like really small, you know, drafting game that takes like 15 minutes or something. The slight downside with this game is like the app is absolutely necessary. They have a scoring app which is fantastic, because you can essentially, you'll end up the game with 7 cards, and you can just put those cards that you have in the app and it'll just calculate your score, because otherwise it is actually quite complicated sometimes to work out what your score is. But I think it also, you know, again, it just delivers like a lot of replayability and a lot of variability in how a game will work out. And yeah, you can get unlucky and you do poorly, but it takes 15 minutes and you just play again. So I think anyone who likes drafting games, likes combinatoric games, is well served to look at a game like this. It's maybe one that you can tell a little bit more from like looking at the rules and looking at the cards. You can get a bit of a sense of how it might play, and like the kind of the variety in the cards and how they will change the way you play. I think if you're designing games where you need to have lots of different abilities or lots of different conditions, looking at something like Fantasy Realms is a good primer to kind of look at like, what are the different ways I can incentivize different actions or different strategies from my players with just, you know, cards, you know, for example. So I mean, it is kind of right in my wheelhouse of a kind of, you know, it's like special powers and drafting and the theme is a bit ridiculous, but you know, it's kind of classical Magic era, like 1993 or something. But I really enjoyed it, and I think it's just worth checking out. I think it also flew a little bit under the radar. Like I didn't even like, I only knew about it because I was introduced to it at GridCon, like Paul Grogan's convention last year in the UK, and I wouldn't have tried it otherwise, because it just kind of, I was like, oh, it doesn't look all that interesting, but check it out. It's definitely worthwhile. So those are my like kind of 3 quick and fresh kind of games. Alex says it's nice to have a game with that level of exploration, a small quick package. Yeah, I think actually, to be honest, all 3 of these games, I think that comment will describe these 3 games, and that's what I'm looking for. Like, you know, they're kind of like, call them like breakfast games. You know, they're things that you play over breakfast for 10 or 15 minutes, and those get played a lot. You know, like I'm really lucky that we can play one every morning. And another one that hasn't really been on the list is Metro X. I've played that like 25 times or something like that, and that still has like a lot of replayability, or we still enjoy it. And so that, you know, that's a pretty high bar to sort of like crossover, because a lot of games you'll play 3 or 4 times, you're like, oh, I don't, you know, it's fine, but I can see there's going to be quite similar, and that's just not interesting. But these games have sort of got over that hump or requirement, I guess. Robin says, I've heard good things about Fantasy Realms. I haven't tried because it's 3-player minimum. Yeah, that's funny. Does it actually describe itself as 3-player minimum on this? Because there is a 2-player variant. Yeah, it's funny. The community says 2 to 5. That's funny. So there is a 2-player variant, and it works quite well. So you can definitely play it with 2 players. Yeah. So yeah, don't believe the packaging. I don't know why it says that. And I think the 2-player variant's in the rules. So I don't understand what happened there exactly. Maybe it was in like a second printing or something they did that. But the 2-player version is quite good. Would definitely recommend it. It's a different kind of drafting in a way. You have like an open display that you're sometimes exchanging cards with or fighting over. So I saved the day. Well, I mean, it was done before I talked about it, but yeah, anyway. So the next game up is what I am calling structured narrative, and there's only one game in this category, and it's The King's Dilemma. So this, I think they've done a second edition, and maybe it changed the new edition. Yeah, I think that possibly could be true, and I could have a second edition. I mean, I bought it. I got a second-hand copy actually, but I can check. But yeah, definitely 2 players works well. Can recommend. Yeah, yeah. So King's Dilemma, well, came out kind of late 2019. Actually, picked it up at Essen 2019. I picked it up. I split the cost with a friend here in Prague, with the idea that we would play it. Funnily enough, it was always a bit tricky when I was traveling in between the countries, but it waited until I was sort of stuck, quote unquote, stuck in the Czech Republic, that we could actually play and get through it, and we did. We played. I'm trying to look. We played 19 games of it at 5 players. Yeah, it's interesting. I'm not going to spoil anything. I'm not really going to necessarily give a review. I think for me, the thing that anybody who wants to work in the kind of narrative space in games should play this game. For me, it is I think one of the best combinations of like fusing of like player-led decision making and player-led narrative. I think games often fall into, they kind of make a choice. It's like, is this game going to be interesting from sort of a game mechanic, from a choice point of view, from like player choice, or is it going to be interesting just like from a narrative point of view? So like Forbidden Waters, is that the Plaid Hat pirate game? I'd say it skews very heavily on the kind of like, that's just heavy narrative. Like the game mechanics are kind of like supporting it, but they're not particularly interesting. They're pretty random. They're pretty fluffy. And then I guess it goes all the way to like very like mechanical games with like a little bit of narrative, which I think, when you're seeing in these, with these kind of like, the New Dale, what's the, like, Oh My Goods and all these kind of like narrative legacy parts, like the kind of way Alexander Pfister does it, or the kind of more, the kind of legacy games, I guess, like Rise of Queens, Forgotten Waters, thanks, Matt. Like Rise of Queensdale, or the Stonemaier game one, which I'm now forgetting the name of as well. Anyway, so I feel like there's a lot of games like that this genre is still kind of being explored. There are still new things. But for me, I felt like King's Dilemma actually did the best job in terms of balancing those two things, making both of them kind of important. It does kind of highlight in the end why you might want to choose one or the other. That if you actually do balance the two, personally for me, you end up with something that kind of falls like it. You don't get the best of both worlds. You get the things that niggle you from both worlds, and they don't necessarily work well together. But I think it can educate designers as to what choice they want to make, and to be intentional in what you want your narrative game to be, and how do you want to deal with player choice, and how the mechanisms want to work. So the thing with King's Dilemma is that for me, the Fate deck, for the way of introducing new choices and new narrative in a sort of a semi-random, unstructured way is by far the best part of the game for me in terms of a design thing. I love the simplicity of it, the kind of, even the kind of ergonomics of it. It's very easy to handle. You have a deck. When you get new cards, you shuffle them in the deck. You have a deck, and it keeps going, and then you just flip the top card of the deck and do something. Very easy to handle. There's some beautiful moments where there's like kind of emergent narrative. It does feel like somewhat of a realistic world that you're kind of living in, because sometimes some narrative is going forward, but then you don't hear about it for a while, and it comes back. And of course, that's like, it's not, the game doesn't make it happen that way, but I felt like it offers that kind of like realistic emergent narrative at like such a minimum of mechanics to do that, and minimum of like handling. It's a brilliant system, and the way that how it does like branching narratives, I think, is very, very well done. So that is why you need to play this game, and you don't need to play the whole thing. You don't need to like play the whole campaign. If you play it once, I think you will see this like what I think is the best part of it. But of course, the other reason I'd sort of say play it is you can kind of see, like, even why it's hard to have a competitive narrative game. It's kind of, I think it is just remarkable. It's extremely audacious design. It reminds me of like a Friedman Freeze, like 504 kind of thing, where it's like these are the games that push forward the hobby and push forward like the genre, even if they're kind of a bit imperfect. And for me, of course, the problem with the game is that it like, it's competitive and you have points. And the problem is that, at least in our group, that it's hard to get away from these, like, I guess we're not like very role play. We're not from the role playing side. We generally would play more like strategic Euro games. And like when you have this way to win the game, it just kind of overshadows a lot of the narrative and a lot of the possibilities for interesting like conflicts or interactions between the players from a narrative point of view, or from sort of a different, like a narrative motivation point of view. The point side, I would argue, in some ways actually doesn't work. There are like a few things that are like a little bit unbalanced, and that's unfortunately a little bit compounded by the fact that you just play the game over and over again. So there's a few elements, like there's some goal cards that are kind of present in every game, and they don't feel exactly balanced against each other. They can provide very different experiences for the players that are like more or less interesting. There's a heavy dose of like not being able to control what's happening, and yet there's kind of points. So like you can kind of like lose a game without like having any real agency in that sometimes. And then on the narrative side, the tricky thing with the way that it's done mechanically is that it kind of shows what narratives you need to work in this system. I think the system can work. I think it does work, but I think the difficulty, at least in this game, is that the narrative threads kind of they've merged together a little too much. Like the stories are a little too similar. Then it's not that they are completely similar, but when you combine it with this idea that you don't know, like stories will progress at different points. You're sometimes progressing on one story and then progressing another. They are already kind of mixing in your head, and to have players, to be able to allow players to kind of keep them separate, the narratives I think really have to be really distinct, and I just don't think they're distinct enough in this game. And there are a few too many dilemmas that just kind of that become a bit samey. And that's nothing. It's not really like it's nothing to do with mechanics. And I think that I imagine they're going to make more games with this system. And I would be very interested to check them out, because I mean, just as I talk about with the adventure games, you learn from making the first iterations of them, and then you kind of iterate, and even as you're releasing new products, you realize like what's the really core part of an experience. And so I think I hope the same thing will happen with the King's Dilemma. But I would definitely recommend trying it out. I really think it's like just enough rules, just enough mechanics to give some structure to experience, which I like. And, so it's not complete, role-playing theme, narrative. But there's also there are genuinely interesting kind of narrative dilemmas that come up. So yeah, that's why I was on like this kind of idea of structured narrative. And if you're working in that space, I think you absolutely have to play it, or at least play it once and experience that. Yes. Also, probably to remind me that I won't play, like legacy games very much. Hey Ross, how are you going? I really enjoy King's Dilemma as a round table conversational place, but then I quite like sloppy random games that involve talking. It is great for that. I think if you're a group of friends, I mean, the other slight difficulty is I played it with a group where we all know each other somewhat, but we're not necessarily very close friends. I think it would be very different if you had a good close group of friends and you were playing. I think it would be a great experience to do that. So yeah. Oh, hey Jess, how you going? Welcome. My cat woke me up early today, so enjoying some Twitch. Hey, how you going? Well, I hope you enjoy your early morning, your cat as well. Yeah, and enjoy your hopping around. Yeah, so no, that is, I think it's going to mean a lot of, and I think with any of these kind of narrative role-playing games, obviously they're very group dependent as well, but certainly worth trying out. Rob says, we've not been able to play King's Dilemma since lockdown, so I have no idea what the story is anymore. I kind of liked it, but kept thinking, why am I playing this for once when I just play Article 27 and get the same gaming experience? Yeah, I think, yeah, that's why I say I think play it once. I think you'll learn the things you can learn and that you should learn as a designer from it. I don't think the legacy aspect is as important. Yeah, it would basically be my take on it. But and it is a bit expensive. I mean, ultimately, I'm not. I still have the box, which the objective is I want to go back and just look at I actually kind of want to look at the structure. I want to kind of understand how they structured the branching storylines and like open all the envelopes that we didn't open and things like that. So I still have to do a little bit of like study, a little bit of like reflection at some point. Yeah. So there, that's the King's Dilemma. So the next kind of category of like games of 2020 to play as game designer is a category I've called mix and match. And mix and match is actually my take on this idea of fusing two different mechanics or genres together. And I think there are some really good examples of games that obviously do this. And the first is new to me for 2020. It's not, again, it's from 2017, and that's Bunny Kingdom. Actually, that's not quite true. I have played it maybe once before this year, but I bought a copy this year. And for those who don't know, this is essentially like area control mashed together with card drafting is probably the best way to describe it. And it's very, I guess, I've got two games in this little category, and they're quite like blatant in that you know exactly what's being combined. But I guess my only point from this that I think is interesting for designers, I'm not necessarily going to talk about the design of the games that much. I think it's just, it reminds you that it can be such a great place. If you don't know what to design or you don't know what to work on, just take two games you like or two genres, mash them together, and just ask yourself, what would happen if I tried to put these two things together? What are some interesting, you know, like, and Bunny Kingdom is like, what if every card was a territory kind of thing, and there are 100 of them? You know, that like it kind of builds out. I mean, obviously that's not all the design, and there's a lot of else that goes into the design of these games. But I think it reminds you that it can be a really great place to start, and there's value in that. And not all games start like that. It's not always going to end up in a finished game if you do that. But like Bunny Kingdom works really well. I personally really enjoy it. Again, it's another one of these games where there's like 160 cards, and it's like you're going to get 20 of them in the game. Like that's like my dream game, basically. Like, 160 unique cards. You're only going to get 20. They score, in interesting ways together. So there is a bit of a bias to that. But I think it's playing these games, you can see how it takes interesting aspects from how the two mechanisms or the two genres can inform each other and sort of create new feelings. So one thing in this game is that you want to connect territories, essentially. So every card is a territory, like A1, A2, A3, B1, B2, etc. And there is this concept in drafting games of like wheeling cards. So like if I have a hand of cards and I start and I'm going to pick one and then pass it along, wheeling a card means if I see it in my opening hand, I think, oh, maybe I don't have to take it now. Maybe it'll go all the way through all the other players and it might come back to me and I could pick it then because maybe the other players don't want it. So that happens in drafting games. But in this game, the interesting thing is because you want territories that are connected to each other, if you see two cards that are kind of next to each other, if you see like A1 and A2 both in your hand, you can go like, oh, I can pick the A1 now, and how likely is I'm going to get that A2 back? It makes it so, it like brings it really to the fore of thinking about, oh, I want cards that are connected. I'm really worried about what's coming around back to me because I want those two cards. I really want them together. So exactly. That's actually, and related to that is this idea of hate drafting. So hate drafting is basically taking a card that you know is good for somebody else. And of course, the great thing about Bunny Kingdom, because it's all on a board, you see, and you put your bunny on it. When you take a card, you put your bunny on it to show you have that territory. It's so easy to see the impact if you take a card, like how good a card might be for an opponent. It can make the game a little bit long because, especially when you have like these big hands, not only do you have to worry about cards that might be good for you, you have to be quite careful about cards. You really want to look at every card because maybe you're passing a card that's just absolutely perfect for the other player. And unfortunately, like the two-player variant, at least for me and Shreezy, hasn't quite worked because it has you have to kind of do this like dummy hate drafting. So you choose a couple of cards that you just don't play in the game, which it can be great, but it also can lead to these kind of like zero decisions where you're like, I have to make a decision, but I don't really know, like, okay, I'll take this card. I think it's going to be bad for you. It's like all these cards are kind of useless to all of us, so I guess I'll choose one. Those are decisions I don't really like in games, but I think you can really see the mixture of this, like the area control and drafting, and how it presents new strategic concerns, new kind of play patterns. So yeah, that's why I think like checking out these games, and it's such a great creative exercise. I think to start with that, and it really can lead you to explore new space. And in some ways, I think it can be easier to sell those games because again, you're taking things that are kind of already 80% of the game is kind of familiar to players. They know how card drafting works, or they know how area control works. Okay, so now you just have to learn like the new 20%, which is like the extra like intersection of them or something like that. So yeah, that's Bunny Kingdom, and the other one, well, yeah, I can't really talk about this one very much, and I mean it's very popular in top 10 lists anyway of the crew, and I actually have only played this a couple of times, so, and I don't even own the copy. I wasn't sure. I think maybe some people in chat have told me that it works with 2 players. I just wasn't sure whether I kind of thought it would be better with playing with more players. I'm a big trick-taking fan, actually. Like that's my kind of background in games. When I was very young, I played a lot of trick-taking games. So I think it's sort of maybe I'm going to set off talking about the crew, but again, it's like a cooperative game and trick-taking. And of course, not everything works, but when it does work, it can be just so. Oh, thanks, Robert. Good. I'll have to get. Unfortunately, we'll have to get a check copy, I guess. But if Treasy can tell me what the mission says, then we'll be fine for the rules or whatever. Again, it's just like what I take out of it is understanding that obviously like design has to be more than just mix and matching. There's more work to be done to make that work, and like the first instinct you might have for how to mix 2 different mechanics together might not be the right one, and maybe it won't be the best thing, but it can be a great starting point, and it can really force you to like chart uncharted waters, so to speak. So yeah, that kind of falls into the things that you definitely have to try just to see how that works, and see like if you go to your head and go like, oh, the academic exercise was just to mix these 2 things, and you play the final experience, you can kind of see how you have to travel from that initial kind of pitch to the final experience. Robert says the crew really is fantastic. Online is starting to keep a bit odd, or is being a bit odd or something like that, with players occasionally abusive in chat if you make a mistake. That's well. I mean, I get, is that from playing with people you don't know? Like, I don't know if I would actually really want to play this kind of game with people I don't know for kind of exactly that reason. Because I have played it, I mean, once or twice when I played it, there was actually some stress, especially if you have players who are not all the same level of like with trick taking, for example, especially if like 2 players really know what the, like know how it works, or know they've kind of solved the puzzle, and they're just waiting for the other person to do it. I mean, that like it's not like for me that's why it's sometimes not a perfect game, because it can kind of be a bit analytical, and if somebody doesn't see that analysis, you really, again, it's kind of group dependent. Well, I'm sorry to hear that, Robert. Yeah, I mean, well, but Zayt and Rob have said will welcome you into their group, hopefully. And I quite happily play it with people I know. I'd love to try it out, so maybe we can organize an online session sometime, or do it over stream or something like that. Yeah, and definitely, I'm looking forward to kind of exploring a little bit more. I've played like, what was the quest, like 15 or something, because I didn't even try to do them in order, which is not. I'm not very like I wasn't trying to do it because like the early missions weren't very interesting to me, but the one where you even like, it's kind of like Mazair in Yuka, where you have to like lose all the tricks. That one I really enjoyed. Hey, how you going, Brendan? Welcome. We're talking about the top 10 games I played in 2020 that I feel like designers should try out. Hey, Nicola, how you going? To try out, because there's things you could learn from them. And funnily enough, The Crew is almost the only game on the list which was actually kind of released 2019, 2020. There's a few older games in the list as well. Rob says trick-taking in general can get aggressively analytical, which is kind of the point of them. Yeah, I think, again, it's just, if everyone's on the same level, then that's fine. And that's what I love about trick-taking games, actually, for exactly that reason. but it's like playing a deduction game where, you know, like if one player is just not at the same level or enjoying the same, it kind of can ruin the experience for everybody. So it's just tricky, I guess. Ross and I got to introduce some of the trick taking we were playing this game. It's a bit different from your typical trick taking game. So no, I'd like to think they're a step ahead. So now I'd like to think they're a step ahead. Yeah, no, exactly. But I think it does a good job of actually, you know, it's still working in the, you know, it still keeps to the basic trick taking game, which is sort of, you know, it's also one of those games where you play and you're like, oh, why didn't I think of that? Because, you know, like it's sometimes you get a combination that actually it's like, once you've got that mission, they didn't have to change the trick taking very much. Like there was not a lot of mechanistic thing, and I'm not taking away from the design of it, but you're just like, man, that was a good starting point. You know, there's a lot of interesting thing to do there. Bass says same dilemma with the Isle of Cats. 2019 by law, by law. This game, I need like a gavel. This game was released in 2019, but 2020 for most gamers. Yeah, well. Bram says, I want to play this game, but haven't had a chance to. I've got a lot of free time this weekend, so I might try playing online. Yeah, me too. Well, maybe we should organize some time to play. I would also like to play it more as well. So that's it for my mix and match kind of thing. The next category that I talk about is I've called minimalism. I seem to follow a lot of people on YouTube talking about minimalism as well. So it's only fair that I'm looking for it in my own games. Let's see. Ah, yes. So another 2019 game, Res Arcana. Oh, I'm game. Okay, Ross, let's do it. Let's do it this weekend. Or, okay, will we find some way to message each other? I'm in. Okay, count me in. Do I listen to the Minimalist podcast? I don't. I know they have. Are they the same people who have the new Netflix documentary? I follow Matt Diavella, which is like another minimalist person on YouTube. I'm a little bit. Maybe one day I'll do another stream vaguely about productivity and how I don't know whether to like try and reorder my life around all these things or to just realize they're just, you know, it's useful for those people who do it or not. But I don't listen to their podcast. And I'm kind of using the word slightly tongue-in-cheek. So yeah, I mean, take of it as you will. So there's two games of that. So Res Arcana. I mean, obviously, I'm probably going to select the game just because it's Tom Lehman, you know, designer of my favorite game of all time, Race to the Galaxy, and it's another special card game, you know, with combos. But you know, the amazing thing. Oh, I think I've missed some Bridge comments. I still want to try Bridge. As I've been gaming for so long, it seems odd I've never tried such a famous trick taking game. I mean, it's one of those things that I actually, when I was younger, you know, kind of late high school, yeah, sort of like 15, 16, I actually joined a bridge club or like a junior bridge club, and I really enjoyed it. It's sort of funny. It's another one of those lifestyle games that like people just play bridge and they don't play anything else, like or chess or Scrabble or whatever. But it's fascinating. It's really fascinating because there's all the bidding systems, and it's this one of the thing of you're trying to understand the bidding systems to like have this. It's a form of secret communication, really. Like by just through these bids, you have to communicate exactly what's in your hand. And actually, the play of bridge is quite. It's not mechanical, but there's not like that much choice around it necessarily. Like there's one or two ways that most hands can be played, but it's all about. And there's just lots and lots of bidding systems, and you can try different things. But it's also very, very friendly kind of community. Everyone's, the interesting thing is you're also considered like a youth player until you're like 35 or something, which is interesting. I would really recommend Bridge. I think it's another one of those things that it's actually a really nice community. So like right now it obviously doesn't make sense. But yeah, I really enjoyed Bridge. And yeah, again, like find a good group where everyone's learning at the same time. That's why, you know, when I was playing, we were all kind of being introduced as you know, like you want to learn how to play bridge. So we're all at the same level. We're all being taught the same kind of like systems and things. So yeah, that was really great. So sorry, I'm trying to catch up on chat. Bram, okay, yeah, let's try and find a time. Yeah, we will. Perfect. Good. Bass, never looked into this one, but I'm hearing nothing but great things about people I regard high. I guess it's the theme art. Well, yeah, I mean, it's Julian Duval, who's done a lot of the Days of Wonder art, so Ticket to Ride, lots of things. And actually, Sandcastle Games is a publisher that was founded by a former Days of Wonder employee. So I think a lot of the same, like really high quality in terms of components, art, like editing, like think of this as like Days of Wonder in a way, and it is really, really a really high quality design. And for me, why I call it minimalist is that it's kind of like a deck builder or a combo card, but you have a deck of 8 cards. That's it. And there's only actually like 32 cards or something in the whole base game, or 32 or 40 cards. And what's interesting is that it manages to leverage a lot of combos and a lot of variety. Instead of having a big deck, it just has like kind of 3 small decks or 3 small categories of cards. So you have these artifacts, which are the cards you're going to kind of play in front of you like a tableau builder. You have what are they called? I don't know what they're called, but you have like kind of special power cards. You have one every turn, and you kind of swap them in. And there's like only 8 of them. And you have a mage, and you'll have it's like a starting power, basically like a hero power in Hearthstone or something like that. And the interesting thing is, like, there's only like there's like 8 mages or something like that. There's like 8 of these kind of special powers that you swap out, and there's only like 32 cards in the game, of which you only have 8. But like for having these like kind of 3 small like intersecting parts of the game, and having enough variety in them, you get like this huge combinatorial space, which is really great. The other thing about Rezakana is that it's like 4 rounds long. It's kind of a race. It is a race game. It's a race to 10 points, but it's really quick, and it does this incredible thing of like it packs the normal kind of arc, like the kind of escalating arc you see in a lot of like tableau builders, where like I don't have many cards to start with. I build some more cards, and then whoa, suddenly I'm getting all this stuff done. It just compresses that same arc into like a quarter of the space, because you're just doing you're not doing much in the first round. You might play 1 or 2 cards. You might take like 3 or 4 actions, and by the end of the round, like in the 4th round, you're winning the game. You're pulling off. You're making tens of resources, and you're making like 5 cards or something, and it just packs a lot into a very small space, and with really like a quite small number of components. It's still just a card game, basically, with some tokens to represent the resources. And I could put Race for the Galaxy in this same box as kind of minimalist, the kind of depth of gameplay it does for that. So I think the only other thing is that it does something a little bit different from a lot of these kind of tableau building games, is that it's actually it's a really interesting take on interaction. There are kind of like things like dragons in the game, which you kind of attack the other player. But it's sort of a very Euro interaction, in that there's a lot of ways to get out of the attack, to kind of defend against the attack. You can usually see it coming a very long time off. And actually, if you as a player are choosing to attack, you kind of had to invest a lot of resources to do that you could have spent doing something else that might have got you more points. So it's actually a lot more about like efficiency and resource allocation, about how do you choose to make threats to the other player that might make them do something a little bit more suboptimal. And I think for that, it's also a very interesting game to look at. Again, without a lot of rules around it, without a lot of, like, it's not complicated the ways players interact, and also because it's this kind of race, there's, for example, when you pass in this game, you can choose when to pass. It's a little bit like Kalis, that sometimes actually you might pass very early in a round. And that's actually strategically very good, because when you pass, you take the star player token for the next turn, and that's worth a point, actually. So sometimes there's a lot about timing about when you pass, because is this the turn I'm going to try and win, or is it the turn that I could prevent the opponent from winning by passing early enough to take away that extra point that they could have like got up to 10. Bass says, guess Furnace could make a shot in this category. Yeah, I haven't played Furnace, but yes, it also looks like a very condensed kind of engine builder with quite a bit of interaction. But even Furnace in a way it kind of has 2 phases, right? You're kind of bidding for the cards and you take it. In this, it's just turn-based. You just take 4 or 5 turns and you're done. Like it kind of strips out a lot of the like different phases, and it just gets on with it. So I don't know if it's perfectly minimalist. I've kind of put it in this category in a sort of rough way, but it is really nice. I mean, I will say though, I kind of feel like you kind of know if it's a game for you. I don't know if there's going to be many people who look at like it's Tom Lehman game, special powers, tableau builder. If all those words sound good to you, you're going to like this game. If you don't like that, then you're not going to like it. And as a designer, I think whether if you want to make games in this space, and if you are making games in this space, you need to check this out, because I think it's an evolution. It's like a refinement of I think of all the great things Tom Lehman does do already. But if you're not designing this space, then well, it's still kind of interesting to see how lean it can be. But it's, you know, a lot of the lessons are quite, you know, focused for that particular type of like genre of game, I guess. The other one that is kind of with this, although quite differently, and I'd say this is probably a little bit close to what people might think of minimalism, is The King is Dead. I only got to play this once, and it was on Tabletop Simulator, but I had not played it. I hadn't really ever heard of it, and it's just I am still bowled over in just like with a map, a few colored cubes, and you know the same 8-card hand for everybody. Just the kind of like the emergence of this kind of really tight game experience that is a bit unlike anything I've done, and such straightforward rules, like, you know, players, you know, you play a card or you pass, or, you know, and even what the cards do is very straightforward. You're trying to, you know, control these kind of territories, and a lot of the tension comes in with these normal kind of area control things, which have like timing restrictions, like, do I invest in this territory? Is it actually going to score? Maybe someone else is going to do an action after I do an action. But it really gets the most out of everything in the game, out of every decision when to play a card. You know, even you don't see it very often where you have a fixed hand of cards and like that's all you're going to do in the whole game. But how do you choose to subdivide that? How do you choose to approach that? And having so many different ways you can do that, or I suspect different ways you can kind of navigate through that, is really interesting. So yeah, it's a tougher game to play right now because it's like 3-player minimum. I'm pretty sure probably like 3 or 4 players. I'd imagine we played with 3 and it worked well. But yeah, another kind of game which I think is just remarkable to play, to realize like what you can still get done without not a lot, you know, with only a few interacting components, how you can, you know, create a really lovely, limited, tight, tension-filled experience. Ooh, I think I need to quick talk, a break from talking, you know. I need to like hit some sort of like button for like now listen to some calming music while Matthew his voice recovers from talking for a while. Yeah, so that's minimalism for this. I think so that, yeah, you'll notice that I've gone through 8 games, only 4 to hydrate, redeem. Thank you. I'm hydrating. Yeah, thanks for that, Robin. Yeah, it's funny. I'm very good at like, I think I'm very used to actually drinking a lot of water through the day, but I'm not talking obviously, so it's almost subconscious. But when I'm streaming, you don't really. Yeah, I could type on the jazz thing for a little while. Yeah, I should try that. Yeah, so the next category up is is realism. And what I mean by realism is more, I guess this final category is not really so much about games that are I'm not sure if it's so much about, as a designer, that you're learning from the design of the game, but maybe learning from the product or even like the kind of pitch of the game. And I don't think it's like news to anybody, but I feel like it's the direction the industry is moving, or where I think there's a lot of opportunity as designers, especially if you're trying to sell games to publishers. I think making games that lean on realistic themes and mechanisms that support that realistic setting, you know, you can get so much mileage from that and really create really great experiences without necessarily having to push like the mechanical bar too high. And it's not really saying anything bad about the games. It's just that it's just a reminder that it's not just mechanisms alone that kind of deliver the overall experience or the kind of atmosphere of a game, and to not kind of ignore that. And the first game is On the Underground, which might be a bit of a strange choice, I guess. And also, it's actually obviously originally quite an old game that was kind of released in 2019. But I should have probably, yeah, Robin says 30. I could do 30 minutes of jazz typing. I wonder, maybe that'll become a new category, like on Twitch or something. People just maybe yeah, you can type out an entire novel in jazz or something. Could be fun. But yeah, I'm sure I'll still be going in about half an hour. Have a nice dinner. For those who haven't played On the Underground, it's kind of like the London Underground, the game, and for those, you know, I always loved kind of I loved public transport as a kid. Sort of a famous family story is that so I have a twin brother, and when we were about 5 or 6, we went on a trip, you know, in kindergarten to Sydney, and Sydney was far away from where we lived. It was like a 2 or 3 hour train journey. And we went during the day to visit dinosaur, like in the museum, to see dinosaurs, like dinosaur skeletons and things like that. And coming home on the train, we both had my mother gave me and my brother sheets of paper to kind of like play with or draw. And when we got to the end of the journey, my brother had drawn all the dinosaurs that he'd seen that day, and of course now he's gone on to become like a graphic designer, a composer. So you can see where that was. And I had just essentially reproduced the timetable. I had written down every station as we stopped at it and the time we stopped at it, and that was my experience of the thing. So I think I've always been fascinated with traveling and you know, like changing lines and what's the most efficient way to do things. And On the Underground is that game. It kind of perfectly like takes what I consider like an experience rooted in real life, and somehow like casts it into a board game, and you just get exactly the same feeling, because it's all about making the most optimal journey by lines. And the kind of beautiful thing is that you build these metro lines, and it's a very like it's very driven by the game how you want to build them. You want to kind of like build them in such a way to make a passenger use your lines. You get points for them using your lines. But it's interesting how, as the game plays out, you do build something that looks like a real metro line. And even though, you know, there was a few rules that kind of led you to make this thing that looks kind of realistic, it's also and the nice thing is that again, it's just the mechanics really support what that theme is trying to do. There are plenty of games about metros or networks, but I think this one just perfectly recreates something we all kind of think about, like, oh, what's the best way? Do I want to change the lines? Oh, I don't really want to do that. I just want to go straight through. And it just does that. There's a bit of a cost to it. There's like, you kind of have to learn like the algorithm of how, or the AI of how the passenger will travel. And sometimes that can be a bit fiddly. So I wouldn't call it necessarily perfectly elegant, but I think like it's pretty much there. And I think, yeah, if especially if that kind of experience about being intrigued with public transport and kind of making your way around a city or things like that, if that kind of resonates with you, I think as a designer trying out this game just to see how you can get a game experience to line up to that. And I think for that reason, I think it's probably a great family game. I think as long as you have one player who kind of understands how the passenger works and can show to other players, it's a very approachable theme. And I think that's why realism has such an opportunity to do really well as games are released that are like this, because just like Wingspan, which is, I feel like, is the game that's kind of brought this all to the fore, is that it's something that people can relate to, and it's not off-putting. It's kind of welcoming, and especially when the mechanisms then back that theme up. Rob asks, I played the original version a few years back. Do you know if much has changed? I'm afraid I didn't play the old version, so I'm not sure. Yeah. Oh, no worries, Dave. See, I'll catch them a little later, or see you later, or whatever. Yeah. So would recommend trying that out. And I think personally, like, which is not really the recommendation for designer, I actually think the game is actually really, really good. And I don't see it talked about very much, but I think it's like one of those route building games that, like a bit like Transamerica in a way, that is just, I feel like, is like a foundational route builder game that unfortunately is not up there with Ticket to Ride, and I can see why it's not as popular, because yes, the thing around the AI with the passenger is a bit tricky, but if you kind of can handle that and it's not a problem, then it's a really, fantastic experience. And the other game I put in this, which is, I did play it this year, and that's why I kind of got into the list, is Parks. Not really a surprise to anybody. And the things to learn as a designer, I wouldn't say necessarily there's much from the design of the mechanisms itself. you know, it's pretty standard fare. It's very well done. It's very smooth, but you know, I wouldn't say there's so much novelty there or things that you wouldn't have learned from playing other games. But again, it's how you can fuse a really great, realistic theme with mechanics that can support it, and then you get a product that is like beautiful, very pleasant to play, a great experience, and really can break out of, you know, the smaller circles of gamers who would normally play these kind of games and really reach new audiences. And I think it's something for me that is a real thing that I really have in my mind more and more, to really try and design more games, and really with that in mind. You know, it's not theme or mechanism first. It's having them both together, but also especially thinking about, well, where are the things that we kind of know from real life that aren't weird, or, you know, how can you, because I think there's even very mundane things from ordinary life that can be just very familiar, very comforting, and there are huge audiences who would really enjoy those things. You know, like you know, even some of the things like Calico or something like that. It's like, obviously it's a bit of an abstract game. It's not really about like knitting a quilt, but you know, it's leaning on those real world connotations, I think. Alex says, I really enjoyed the mopping up strategy. I don't know what the mopping up strategy is. I actually only played it solo. It was sort of interesting. I went to a board game cafe, and sometimes I drop into game cafes by myself, and I was like, okay, well, I'll just try a game. So I pulled off Parks and played the solo variant, which was very nice. And it's incredibly produced. I mean, Keymaster is just like on a different level in terms of, you know, kind of the look of the game and the components and things like that. Oh, I see. So you can move your workers any distance but never go back. Yeah, I think, well, I mean, Agizia does that as well. In Raids, it did that as well. And as time's right, you can send send one or two of your workers to each space. Oh, yes, okay. So you can, yeah, that is true, actually, because it's not a time track mechanism. It's not necessarily whoever's always behind. You do take it in turns. So, yeah, you do get some interesting timing. Like, I can block a space for you now, but maybe you can still take it later, which is interesting. Parks might be lowest played game for 20. Oh, great to hear. Yeah, I'm quite tempted to get it. It's a bit expensive here in Europe, realistically, for ultimately what the game is, which is kind of, you know, which is not really anybody's fault. It's just the way it is. And I was tempted to get it on Kickstarter, but anyway, it didn't quite happen. But yeah, for me, the thing to learn is yeah, there's this wonderful combination of a realistic theme and mechanisms that either really well match it, or at least do a good job of supporting it and don't get in the way of that. And the very final thing, which is actually a category I haven't made a banner for. I'm not particularly. I guess in my personal, maybe this is a little bit less about. Oh, it's pretty pricey, $50. Yeah, so maybe I'll wait for sales. I mean, maybe we could. This is a whole nother topic about designing and things, you know, that we'll talk about later, like another stream, which is this whole idea of like buying games at discount. Like it's one of these weird things as a designer for me to say like, oh, the price of that is a bit too high, because like on the other hand, I'm sort of like, well, I want to put a value on what I do, and there's a reason games, you know, like you want to get away from the idea that a game costs, you know, that it should somehow, like it's a bag of components and my money should get exactly this much material, somehow forgetting the kind of work of design, which is somewhat invisible to this, you know, reckoning. But I also have a limited budget, so I also, like, price is a concern. So it's a funny kind of topic to kind of think about from a designer's point of view of it at all. But anyway, the last category for me, I don't think is also a surprise, but I guess it's about realizing something about myself about replayability and variety. So for a long time, I've, you know, like kind of the 60-90-minute Euro game, or like more like 45 to 60 minutes, like that's a really sweet spot for me. I really enjoy games like that. And I think this was the year where I really kind of realized, I guess, what I really want in those games, and why I might enjoy some games and I don't enjoy others. And really, it's come to the fore with kind of the kind of Italian school of Eurogame design. It's not just all, and by this I mean that, you know, there's a group of Italian designers who often work with each other in different combinations. Simone Luciani is often a common point to many of these games, And for me, it's the pair of Newton and Grand Austria Hotel, which Newton I got very late, very late in the piece, and I've already played a few times. Grand Austria Hotel I played, like how many times? Like 23 times this year. And it made me realize that like what I like is I kind of describe these as like variable puzzles. They're kind of puzzle games, but they always have, and it's a little bit like Res Arcana, where they have lots of different parts where they have enough variability. So they have little different categories of things: scoring tiles, cards, abilities, special workers, whatever. But in each of those, there's enough variability that you have lots of different overlap in how things can happen. You don't see all of them each game. And it's just a really compelling puzzle, I guess. The nice thing in both of them is they also have quite a good action selection mechanism, which also keeps things fresh and allows you to think about things. The games aren't too long. They often keep things to like a small enough like round. Like there's like 7 rounds in Grand Austria Hotel. There's like 5 rounds in Newton or something like that. So they don't overstay their welcome, but you can just keep coming back to them because they're kind of these puzzles, and when you change out the piece of the puzzle, then suddenly it makes you recontextualize all the other pieces that you might have used before in a different way. And I don't know what I would say for designers to kind of learn from it, but just for me, it was a reflection of kind of me working out what I enjoy in games, and now understanding like why I like these over maybe something like Tzolk'in, which I think Tzolk'in has in a way, it has a much more interesting central mechanism of choosing things, but it's actually, the puzzle part isn't as much because there isn't as much variability in terms of what you're actually doing. And it made me realize that that's actually what I prefer. I like more variability in what I'm doing rather than necessarily how I'm doing it. And it's why actually, like Seven Feld used to be my kind of like go-to. And it's fallen off a little bit for me because I think that for me, Seven Feld is great at making the mechanism the really variable and interesting thing to play with. But not always what you're doing is that variable. But I feel like the Italian side, Teotihuacan. Well, no, but actually Teotihuacan is a good example of which I have played and I didn't enjoy as much because again, the focus is the kind of variety and the mechanistic way of doing things, not necessarily in the what you're doing. Whereas these other games, which are often card based or have cards in them, it's the variety in what you're doing in the pieces of the puzzle, not in like that cogs of the puzzle, if that makes sense. I don't know. That was a bit of a weird analogy. Hey, Bez, how you going? Welcome. Glad to hear you enjoyed Grand Austria Hotel. It's fantastic. I very much looking forward to the expansion. Zero Siri, hey, how you going? Hey there, I've never published or attempted to publish anything. I've been working on a tabletop RPG in my spare time and have been told I should put it on itch.io. Do you think it's okay for someone just starting? As far as I understand, I don't really work with itch.io, but I think it's open to anybody. I don't think, if you're comfortable with it being out there, then I think it's a great idea. I know a lot of designers who use it almost like an archive of everything they worked on, even things that are quite rough. It's a really great way to share things with other players. So as far as I understand it, I would go for it. I think that's the best thing as a designer is to get your work out there and get people's opinions on it. It's like kind of like playtesting. Obviously, have that in mind. Maybe tell people like I'm still working on it, or it's still early in the process, or whatever like that. But I think it's a great idea to get things out there and like getting people looking at the game, talking about it, trying it out, offering feedback. You can get a great community around that kind of thing. So I hope that kind of answers your question. But yeah. Where are we? Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. So you should no more listening to the stream. I'm obviously too distracting. Yeah. So anyway, that is my kind of 10 games I played in 2020 that you can kind of learn from as a designer. If any of you have played particular games that you have that you as a designer you felt like you really learned something from, or you think that other designers should try, let me know in the chat. I'll share them out. We'll chat about it. Because I'm always interested in new things. There's definitely a few games that I am very intrigued of and that I didn't get to play. I'd really like to play Anno 1800. I think from what I've seen of that system, again, it seems like a really interesting kind of minimal system in a way to deliver, a big kind of Euro game kind of experience. So that's something I'm really looking forward to trying out. And there's always more games. I didn't really talk about like the larger Uwe Rosenberg games. This was also a kind of a year of finally kind of diving into some of the more heavy Uwe Rosenberg games, which is really great. And I'm considering, I've bought Fist Road and played it a lot, and definitely thinking of getting into, I'm glad they're going to reprint Glass Road, because I was looking at that as something I might get. So yeah. Hey Daryl, how you going? Welcome. Yeah. Oh, it's nice to see all the American folks and things. I just have to keep going. Yeah. I for those who don't know, I this week I also started streaming on Wednesday mornings for just a 1 hour game design cuppa, which is just like a little bit more well, not that this is scripted, but it's less with a topic, more just for like chill kind of morning vibes. And I guess for like West Coast US people, it might actually be more like it might hit the kind of evening time in West Coast US possibly. So if anyone wants to sort of hang out and I guess there will be chill evening times for the West Coast US people. Bez, I was really impressed with Monstrosity. Quite different to the sort of games you've probably been talking about, though. Very cool to see a game so much about communication and listening. Yeah, I think I saw was Ian Zhang streaming this on his channel, or was it somebody else who was streaming it? Yeah, I definitely like to. I'll definitely check that out. I didn't really hear about it very much, and yeah, it's more of a social kind of party game, right? So yes, it's sort of not. Well, it's not the games I've kind of played with only 2 players, but I'd like to try it. Rob, one thing that got me thinking is Abandoned Objects. Yes, I need to try this game. I don't know. It's on the list to buy. I have no idea how to get it here in the Czech Republic. Maybe I'll end up actually getting a German edition, and that's going to be the easiest thing I could do. Yeah, I just have no idea how to get the US edition here generally. So yeah, that is absolutely. I need to play that, and I will buy it when I can. So good catch on that, Rob. I missed it this year. Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. There's obviously right now there's like a bit of a lag. I feel in like a lot of things have been announced, and obviously with the situation of everything, like there's a bit of a lag in games getting released, and yeah, and things like that. So yeah, so that is the kind of that's the meat of the stream. But as always, feel free to ask any questions at any time. This is kind of like throwing it a bit more openly, generally to general Q&A. So drop it. Oh, excellent. Got a first question. Thanks, Jess. Would you ever consider hosting a Q&A for new game designers? My husband is tinkering with several game ideas and needs some encouragement to get them play tested. So do you mean, would you like, yeah, I mean, Q&A is all the time. I'm happy to do. Would you want, is the idea that like you would submit questions beforehand, or people in chat just asking questions? Is that the kind of Q&A sort of thing? If your husband has ideas and is around, get him to plug in the ideas as well. Now I'm happy to answer anything. But yeah, you can ask questions anytime. Also on Twitter. Hey, Low Gamer, how you going? Welcome. I don't believe I've seen you around here. Welcome to the stream. We've just finished the kind of like the meat of the stream today, talking about games you can learn from as a designer that I played in 2020. And catch up later on. And now sort of getting to usually the latter half of the stream is a bit of general Q&A and probably a little bit of shared game playing with other folks. Yes, but I'm a board game designer, and this stream is all about board game designing, basically. Alex says, which of my games had the furthest progression from bad to good? I'm glad that you asked it in that direction and not from good to bad. Yeah, which of your games do you think were really great until a publisher got their hands on them? Well, yeah, it's funny. I feel like all the questions, the answer is always either Elysium or Monumental, because I feel like they're the ones that have like the most journey. So often, like so many more questions are applicable to those. But I have to kind of say Elysium, because, when I think about that game, just went through so many iterations and so many different places, and we didn't know where we were at the start of the game, and kind of finished up with this really amazing game that I feel like also is kind of, it did actually something a bit new. Yeah, for me, I think is the game that's had the most progression when I think about through the designing process. And who knows, there may be some Elysium news that I'm not sure if I'll ever be able to. So I might be able to talk about something about Elysium later this year. So who knows? I'm just having a look at my shelf of other games to see if there's anything else that I would put in that category. No, I think that's kind of the main one, to be honest. Zero Theory, any game mechanics you find particularly clever or interesting this year? That is a good question. I'd have to look at I'll have a very quick look at what games I played. I mean, like, I think King's Dilemma for me is like a very, if I think of like clever or interesting mechanisms, like that is very much up there. I got Age of Civilization. I got the Kickstarter finally, and I think actually it's a pity I didn't talk about that, because I think that's a really interesting. It's a really small, like, kind of tableau builder, but like very. Oh yeah, bye. Who's saying bye? Yeah. I'll see you, Alex. Thanks for dropping by. Have a nice evening. Yeah, it's a really cool kind of minimal kind of worker placement kind of game by quite a small Taiwanese-based publisher, and it's a really fun design. And I played it. I've only played it solo, but I've quite enjoyed it. And it's one of these games that has like a really cool mechanism of it's a little bit like what's the like Small World, where you have races that kind of rise and fall. And in this game, you're going to get to be 3 civilizations over the game, and the game's only like 7 or 8 rounds. And like when you're a particular civilization, it gives you a power, and it's your choice when you're going to like choose a new civilization to like overlay your current one. I think that's really cool. I'll see if I can find it actually. If anyone has an Age of Civilization, Age of Civilization. Yeah, hopefully. Yeah, this is it. Yeah, I definitely I would recommend checking it out. Really, it's just a really interesting take on the genre, actually, like of a civilization game. Again, very minimal. That box is really small, packs a lot of stuff in. Yeah, so that was also quite, like kind of a cool. Like I can't like say that there was like one mechanism, but I think the way that you have the how the different nations, like you have to choose like when to rise or fall, is very cool. I mean, I haven't talked about Finished ever. I mean, it's an older game and it's not really new to me this year. But Finished is, again, one of these amazing things that has somehow taken something. I don't know why I can't find Finished. It takes something that is, it's like the sorting problem from computer science, where you have to sort cards in a row. And for me, it's like the closest to meditation playing games or something. I played it many times. I played it. How many times did I play it this year? But like when it first came out, which was like a few Essens ago, I played it like 30 times. I played it 7 times. And again, it's just something I enjoy as almost as a pastime, actually. Yeah, so I think those would be my kind of. I'm sure there'll be other things that come to me, I guess. I'm just trying to look through my thing, but yeah, that would be it, I'd say. Where are we? Jess, where would you suggest a new design be submitted now that in-person conventions are on a bit of a hiatus? I think it's a great time for design competitions. Cardboard Edison design competition is open right now. I chatted about on Monday's stream, I think. So yeah, I would look at the design competitions. I think that's a really good time. There are these like the pitch project from last year. There are a lot of these things trying to like collate pitches together and then present them to a lot of publishers at the same time, and then like have virtual pitching. I think exploring those right now. I think there's a lot of new things happening in that space. So I would really recommend. Chris Backey of the Virtual Playtesting Group has started a new kind of database of publishers, which is also something to look into. It has a fee. It's charging $50 for like lifetime access to it. But if you're looking for to really get a list of how to like submit like via email to publishers. That's something for that. So I would right now if you're a newer designer, I would really recommend Cardboard Edison competition. You should be entering that. And I've said also publicly, I'm also happy if the financial, you need $10 to enter for each entry. If that's a problem for you for any reason, please let me know on Twitter or whisper at me, and I'm happy to support designers if that's if it's financial burden, because I think there's such great opportunities to not only get feedback, but to go through a kind of process, and it is a route to publication. You know, a lot of the Cardboard Edison winners and runners-ups have been signed and will be published. So yeah, oh yeah, Jess, you're asking especially for someone who hasn't done it before. Yeah, so I think, and also because those design competitions have a lot of structure. There's a lot of, Cardboard Edison is great in, they've got even a whole guide that you can go through. It's all really well stepped out in what you have to do. I don't know, is Button Shy still doing any of their competitions? I don't think so. I haven't heard of them, at least recently. So yeah, that is what I'd recommend. After that, I would, chat and see which publishers, like whether doing your own research by looking up publishers and seeing if they're taking submissions. Like a good publisher, a good example of it, for example, which I think does a very good job of like having a really good submission page, is Alley Cat Games. Disclosure, I've worked with them. Obviously, we had Chocolate Factory. On their web page, they have a contact us and like game submissions point. So hopefully like the better publishers have this, and they're very, very good at basically, they detail exactly kind of what games they're looking for. They even give more details about, what styles of games and things like that they're looking for, and things they don't want. And then they have, a submission form where you can really put details of your games and things like that. And, that's a really great way to look for things. What have I? Yeah. Yeah. So that's that's what I would recommend, I think. But if you have more specific questions about pitching kind of virtually or via email, that might be something that I might try and do in another stream, like how to pitch via email, or maybe what are some important things to do. Like, I guess the other thing to kind of be prepared that has worked well for me is, if you do have your prototype on Tabletopia or Tabletop Simulator, that's a really good way to show publishers these days. And if you can get them kind of interested in the game, actually, in some ways, it's a really quick way to have a kind of almost in-person way of pitching games. And that's, I think, if I get to that point where I need to pitch a game, like actually, that's how I would like to do it, to have a Skype conversation and have Tabletop Simulator, share screen or whatever. I think that's really good. Bass says, I think the bidding claiming mechanism in Furnace. Yep, the second time I mentioned it. You just want me to keep talking about Furnace? Is that going to be that? That's the new game on this stream. That's like the Teotihuacan of my stream. I would like to check it out. I definitely. It's also funny because I feel like the bidding mechanism is somewhat similar to something like that's a mechanism I've tried to put in a lot of games. I often have these interesting kind of bidding selection mechanisms that end up getting cut out of games. So it's I should definitely try. Button Shy challenges a hold for the moment. Yeah, fair enough. Seriously, how much of a product should you have to play with art, or is that optional? Art is absolutely optional. It's interesting. I was reading Daniel Solis, who is the art director for WizKids and a game designer. He was tweeting recently about this and sort of talking about the quality of prototypes. And he used to say what I'm kind of saying now is that you don't need art, don't get finished art. The publisher hopefully will see through the rough, unfinished thing of a prototype. And he was sort of talking about now he's been on the publisher side and he sees that actually publishers are kind of human, and if something looks a bit better, it's a bit more likely someone's going to try it. So I would say that I think the thing you just want to have in mind is there's kind of two things about peaking at publishers. One is to give them as low a barrier as possible to try the game. I think that's a lot to do with, actually, I think it's much more about graphic design than it is about art. Having very clear icons, having the information organized in a good way, in a clear way. And, even things like looking into what fonts you're using. Are you using, because some fonts are a lot easier to look at from a distance, they're easier to read. You know, what are the kind of mix of colors you're using? Are they colorblind friendly? Do they have enough contrast with each other? Are you using icons and colors? Like all of these things are kind of reducing the barrier for the publisher to actually play the game, to play test it. So I think that is very important, and that's something you should definitely work with. Then the other side is like, how do you kind of interest them in playing the game? Because obviously art can kind of do that. If you see some beautiful art, you're like, oh wow, that looks amazing. Maybe I wouldn't worry so much about the prototype. If you can have if you can pull like a cool photo or image that you can have as the cover, or like put on the front of the rulebook, even just something to like lead people in that you feel is giving them the right kind of like context or feeling for your game. That I feel like that can be a very easy way to give that kind of good context or illustrative kind of feeling without necessarily having to put art on all the cards or worrying about all that. And that could be just pulling something from the internet, or finding finding some open domain art or something like that, or some image that can just make it a little bit less like we're just seeing black and white text on cards. I should say though that I'm a little bit removed from that now. Like, not I'm better than everybody. It's not quite like that, but I'm not often pitching to publishers that I haven't pitched to before. And when you already have a relationship with the publisher, like I'm not in that stage where publishers are often happy to play my games or try them out, or at least if they sound interesting, they'll give them a try because they know that I've made games before. So it's not necessarily like it's not something that I have the same issue with. Because that's something for me, like I never worry about art, and my prototypes look very basic actually. So I do worry what I would ever do if I had to pitch to publishers I don't know, because that's not really my strength. But I certainly don't invest too much time, don't invest money in it, but make it usable, which I think often is much more about graphic design. Follow Daniel Solis, who's great, and his Patreon's really great too. He has, he just put out a cool template of like a rules document that you can kind of use and fill in as you want, which is really fantastic. So yeah, that's I think what I would recommend ultimately. Just said, oh yes, I value your opinion, so a virtual implementation would be great. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of the easiest way to share prototypes now. It's sort of interesting. It might be, it's a funny way that the industry might move forward, and maybe even when we meet up in conventions, you might find it still the easiest way is to, and especially if you are pitching, like if you're not going to conventions in the future, it actually might, I hope that it will remain still a bit more open for folks who can't make it to conventions, because publishers are a bit more used to using these virtual tools, which are a great way to, I really think they're not too bad. And you don't even have to be playing together. You can just share your screen of your virtual implementation. And usually that's a lot better way to show off the game, to be trying to, it's a nice visual way to do it over Skype without having to have a rules document up, which is maybe not as exciting. And you can kind of do the same thing when you're pitching a product. You want to kind of move around the pieces. You go and you can move like this, and you move the pawn or whatever. And you can do that on Tabletop Simulator, even if you're just sharing the screen, even if the publisher can't directly interact themselves, you can be showing it to them essentially. Yes, the key is don't invest money in prototype artwork. Keep everything as cheap as possible. As you can see, I've still not invested any money in this stream. I still don't have any extra technology, and I take the same thing. Don't put anything. And yeah, actually, I think Rob's got a good point. Some basic graphic design tricks and you're golden. And that's why I'd say, I think Daniel Solis, I'm sure there are other people, but Daniel Solis has, I think, done the best in terms of putting a lot of information out there. And I think he does other, even more kind of involved things if you support him at higher levels of Patreon, which is still not that expensive for the amount of knowledge that he has and that he's sharing. So I would recommend. Oh, you're just making me very, very hungry now. I'm almost on 2 hours here and I haven't eaten anything for a while. Enjoy your dinner. Yeah, sounds really good. Rob says screenshots from virtual implementations are also really useful for work in progress, rulebooks, cell sheets, etc. Yeah, it can be that's true actually. It can be a really quick way to make a diagram for your rules. Often I have to fire up Illustrator and make a specific new it can actually sometimes be hard to have a diagram of the state of play, because your different prototype components are in different files. I'll have cards in one file and the board in another, and you have to kind of somehow merge them together or copy one into the other and make like some bigger diagram, and that can be kind of tricky. But yeah, like a screenshot from Table Simulator you get to do all that without having to worry about it. I mean, I can't ignore that that's still, you know, for some people that is a barrier, you know, that they're not used to working in the virtual space. I would recommend that it's a good time now with the with in-person convention or happening, if you can, to invest some time in kind of learning these tools, because they are really, really useful. And they're, yeah, and I don't think they're going to go away. I think that even when things open up a bit more, I think there's still going to be a, you know, a way of working, essentially, I expect. Yeah. Oh. Everyone's just going to make me so hungry by just saying, oh, jacket potatoes, that's, no. Well, you know, it's the week where we made lasagna, so like you make it one night and then it's like the meals for the next 3 nights or something like that. We're really trying to not go out very often, so have to get a bit better at buying in bulk. And if anyone has a good idea of what they have for lunch each day, I need to come up with something that is easy to make, but I can have, you know, I can buy enough in like advance, so it doesn't really rely on super fresh food or things like that. We don't also have a very large freezer, so it sort of makes things a bit more difficult. I'm sure everyone enjoys it. Me veering off into food. So I have to advertise my abilities and hope for board games. Well, yes, maybe you'll be, you know, when this flavor game comes together, so you'll be definitely a good playtester, I'm sure. I've been watching a lot of like MasterChef little snippets. You know, again, it's so funny on like the YouTube algorithm. You know, you click on something and then the next 10 videos you get recommended are all on this thing that you've. So now I've fallen down the rabbit hole of watching MasterChef Canada for whatever reason, you know, and having like new ideas of, you know, interesting ways of, you know, combining ingredients and things like that, which is quite fun. Yeah, this can be, we can just share everything we're having for dinner and things like that. Had a Chinese takeaway last time, brought enough, so there's a good lunch saved and left there. That's great. Yeah, it's a bit funny. We have you can get amazing Vietnamese food in Prague. Actually, there's a really big Vietnamese community. Thanks for lurking, Bez. Have a nice dinner or enjoy cooking. And so there's lots of Vietnamese restaurants and also small like Vietnamese grocers. And but we have like our favorite ones, and unfortunately they're not necessarily very close to us. So it's always, there's a Vietnamese restaurant literally like outside the entrance to our apartment, but it's not our favorite one. So it's like, oh, I could get Vietnamese, but it's not the one we really like. And so, yeah, tough, you know, first world problems. Charcuterie is always a go-to for me. Yeah, I'm trying. I guess I'm not really eating much meat. We're almost basically vegetarian now. But yeah, maybe like cheese toasties or something. I mean, it's probably a good thing I don't have a toasty maker here, because that was like my go-to lunch food when I was in England. Also, the higher difficulty in getting good cheddar cheese. You know, but if those things were solved, then I would probably be having cheese toasties every day, and it probably wouldn't be very good for me. But it would be delicious, and I would very much enjoy it. A wrap is basically a toasty, but with salad. Yes, I can think of that. Yeah, I have now I have they have really nice like marinated tofu that you can kind of fry up and make like wraps or burgers and things, and that's quite simple. I go with that. But I can only have that so many days a week. Really, but yes, this is the dinner design variety hour. Exactly. It's maybe the Matthew's hungry. I'm going to fire up a little bit of. I'm feeling a bit like Tiny Islands. So if anybody, I don't know, say is in the chat, maybe has already done the daily challenge of Tiny Islands. But if anybody wants to play Tiny Islands, I'll drop the link in the chat. You got 64. Okay, all right. There's the challenge. The gauntlet has been thrown. So I've just dropped the link in the chat. I am sharing screen. So this is a kind of a roll and write flip and fill game that you play in a browser and internet. Feel free to play along. Grand. So you just have to hit run game. I'm probably not gonna. I'll sort of talk about the rules as I'm playing, but you can feel like you can kind of catch up later if you'd like. Up to you really. And we are going to do the daily shuffle. We've got some more. Or watch Nadia from Great British Bake Off. Has a new show on Netflix. She make quick meals. They're super easy to make and go. Okay, I really like Nadia. Yeah. Okay, I will put that down as a thing. Got all her cookbooks. The ginger rice with chickpeas is well worth all the standing and stirring. Oh, that's good. Yeah, I feel like I should get probably like Ottolenghi or whatever his name is, like because he's a very like big sort of vegetarian chef or something like that. Oh shit, my dear. Yeah, that's the difficulties with this like talking about food. Everyone's reminded that they need to have some dinner. Yeah. So my high score was 670. Not sure what typical high score. I think that's pretty good. I think like 60 plus is good. I mean, of course, it depends on the shuffle, but yeah, yes, exactly. I'm going to head off this food talk. Have a great evening, Robert. And she has some mason jar meals. Oh, that sounds really interesting. I'm writing all this down. I'm intrigued. Maybe this will turn into it will eventually turn into a cooking show, you know. Anyway, so let's go. Tiny Islands, daily shuffle. Yeah. Okay, so these are the rules. There are different aspects, and you're going to draw 3 islands over the course of it. Let's see how we go. I like houses. I like an early house because you can sort of build around it. So like houses, you can like have a variable scoring, whereas waves are only ever going to be 2 points. So let's do some houses. No worries. Thanks very much. Have a nice evening, bro. All right, Bass is playing along too. So having houses that are kind of close to each other is good because you might be able to put a church near them. So I'm gonna start on this and see how we go. Oh, I'm close on a church. Okay, so I think I should be putting a church, and I'll try and make an island with those houses. Okay, and we'll do trees over this side and hope that I keep getting trees that are adjacent. Yep, that's pretty good. Let's go trees. Oh wow, okay, it's like, just give me all those trees. So you want lots of trees that are near each other, essentially. Oh, this is a bit tough though. Yeah. Oh, that's a tough church. That's not a very good mountain either. Because you can't have churches on the same. Yeah, I'm gonna stick a mountain up here and just hope that I get some trees, I guess. Excellent, some more trees. Happy with trees. Happy for these trees. House is good. Do not want a church. I'll try and load up. Oh, okay. Fine, Bass. Fine. No, I'm not the master. I don't actually play that much, to be honest. But like since sort of streaming, I guess I've got more used to it. I think let's try something like this. I'll try and make this a big island. I always find it a bit difficult in the corner, actually. Kind of gets a bit stuck. All right. Next to my name of my next to the church. I don't like doing beaches before I know where they are, because I find like you have to get so lucky exactly where it is, or at least that's how I kind of feel like it has to go. But I know that that's, yeah, it might not be the right move. This is a really bad ship, and I'm just going to try and load up on houses and hope that I get some elements that I can put that will kind of like help those houses. That ship is also not very good. I'll put some shore here. Whew. Well, we can at least give something for this mountain to be near. I'd love a mountain down here who will score. Oh, I see what you mean. Having the beach, the 4 point. I have to admit that's something I wasn't ever used to doing. So yeah, I'm not very good at necessarily doing it. But I'll put this here to up my score for my houses. I just need a few more things in here to make my houses a bit better. Yeah, so I'll put some waves near that. Oh, happy days. We have a mountain next to my forests. And we have even some more forests, so even more happy days. So this is looking pretty decent, I would say. Pretty decent. I don't know if I want to just have more. Let's just put more houses here. just load them up essentially. Oh, that is another good mountain actually. It's a pretty good mountain. That's like 4 points. That would be 3 points, which is not bad. But I have to take the 4 points of the mountain. It is a very nice forest clump. Yeah, I'm quite happy how it's going. I kind of feel like I want to make this a small island, and then yeah, so I might just do a kind of a small set up here because I don't know what's happening here. I feel like there's the most extra points I could make on this smaller island. I can probably do a nice 3-point beach if I kind of put it here or something, I imagine. Oh, more forests. Wow. Okay, yeah, I've done pretty well on the forest thing. Wow, I probably shouldn't have made that exactly a 3x3 grid, knowing that it's going to work. Hey, Jess, thanks. Yes, it has made me. I shouldn't talk about food on the stream again, but yeah, thanks very much for dropping by, and yeah, and definitely drop by. I'm the same time Mondays and Fridays. 67 points. So yeah, what was Xate? 64, I think Xate had. So yeah, I don't know how. I think I'm doing okay. I feel like investing in this forest has done pretty well. I mean, especially when you look at like just like that. This is a very good forest clump, I will say. That forest is not worth very much. This forest is worth more. Oh, this is a good one though. This is really good because this forest is going to give me +1 on all these houses. So that's super good. And it's also near a mountain. Feeling good. I could have a 2-point coast, which is not too bad. Or I could have a 2-point house. What should I do? I'm just trying to think, how long have I got to... I'll probably get around this okay, I imagine. If I put the house there, it's okay. Yeah, I don't know, actually. It's tricky. That'll only ever be 2 points. So let's try this. Yeah, it's a 2-point house. Yep. Oh, I can't have a church, but that's all right. That's a coast. Yeah, I think I'm just going to have to go. Oh, that's a bit of a pity. But that's all right. It's next to a house, so it'll give me some extra points. Ooh, oh, that's good. Actually, I could up the tree. I could make these trees score, so that's good. The wave is not particularly good. And it's not really going to help there. So yeah, I will just join them up. And then let's finish this off. So make me a nice... Just wondering if there's a way that I can... Let me just work out what I need to do. I definitely need to do this. Need to go around it like that. Oh, but then I can come around like this to give it 2 points. Great. So let's see. Drum roll, please. I think 67 is the score to beat. Let's see. Some okay coasts there. So let's see how these houses do. I never count them up particularly well, but I think it's going to be some good house scoring. It's the first time I've really tried to like clump things together. It's a fairly good church, and here come the points for the forests. Although it's not as much as I hoped, but these mountains are going to be good too, actually. Wow, that's a really good mountain. Yeah, I'm feeling reasonably good. Those who are quick at maths will be able to add up quicker than I can. But I love how it counts up. I think that's a kind of a cool thing. Come on, get over. Ah, so close. You got me, Ross. You got me. But yeah. It's well, there you go, 66. I can take a screenshot so I can put it in Ross's Discord. Yeah, I'll do that. yeah, I felt like I had a good ride. Maybe there was a better way to do the houses. I think I kind of, if I had got probably one more element that could fit in here, then this would have really. Oh, you can't actually see the cursor, can you? That's interesting. If I had another thing on this house island or something. Oh, golf Mondays and wave. So golf obviously must be lowest score on Monday. And what's wave Wednesday? Like to try and place the most waves, I'm guessing. Yeah, because I feel like waves are definitely the most. I feel like boats are really hard to use. Like I don't really feel like they ever. I'm not sure if people who play this a lot. Like at least my take on it is that I almost never do boats, and I never really. But I never try to do. The 70 you got was with boats. Okay. But how do they... Yeah, I guess... Oh, wave Wednesday is if there's a wave, you have to use it. Okay, interesting. Yeah, I guess I haven't quite worked out the boat strategy because you sort of... How many boat... Like, what, do you just put like a small island in the middle and try and get a boat on each corner or something? Or... I guess each of them can score quite a bit, but it must restrict you so much otherwise. Anyway, I haven't, yeah, I think I'm probably, for me, I'm always about trees and things like that. But yeah. Anywho, I think we're kind of coming up to 2 hours. So I think that might call it for today. But thanks to everyone who dropped by the stream. I hope it was enjoyable. Hope you're having a nice evening or wherever, or day, or wherever you are in the world. Hope you have a great weekend and stay safe and well wherever you are. And thanks again for your support, for supporting the stream. I'm really happy how things are going. So yeah, just a reminder, I stream at the same time on Mondays and Fridays, so that's 4 p.m. GMT or 5 p.m. European time, and I am now streaming on Wednesday mornings, which 9 a.m. UK time, 10 o'clock European time. Thanks very much, Ross. That's really kind. And Zayt said, I had a huge island top right that was mostly trees and 2 tiny little islands, 2 boats already far from the island. Oh yes, that's cool. Good. Yeah, it's good to know about that. Yeah, maybe we have to try a boat. Ross, we should try like some series of challenges or something, like boating Saturday or something. You know, you have to take every boat. But for now, let's see if we can find someone to raid. If anyone has a recommendation of somebody to raid, actually, yeah, I'll take. If anyone does, anyone have a recommendation of who we should raid, or someone I might not know, a streamer. I love that part of streaming in a way. Actually, for me, it's a great way to like find new streamers, and I love being able to support people in that way. So I'll give. I think there's a bit of a lag. So if anyone's got anybody you think would be worth taking a look at, I am open to suggestions. There are some geo-guessing people, streamers, but I'm not sure if that's good. Yeah, I guess we're smack bang in sort of dinner time, so it's sort of a weird time to finish. If ever I do a 3-hour stream, then I will definitely have somebody to go to. Yeah. So Rich Spiel blog. Okay, well we can try it out. We can have a look. I'm happy to try it. Hold on, let me find. Yeah, no, I know I can't. I'm guessing you're saying I can't understand German, but you know it could be fun. Is raid still raid in German? Raid channel, Spielblog, or Darude. That's a bit. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know what you're saying. Yeah, okay. Well, let's try it. Let's it'll be an experiment. Hopefully they'll appreciate. What does it look like they're playing? Would you believe? I think they possibly were playing the adventure games. Weirdly enough, so maybe that is not a bad idea. Okay, so let's go. Let's go. Thanks all, and have a good weekend, and enjoy everything. And yeah, see you next week.